Around 2 years ago, a bunch of AI companies started popping up everywhere, and every big business was throwing all of their money at them to try and buy and acquire and invest in these companies. But today, we're going to talk about why 99% of those companies are going to fail.
So, Conall, I like to put you in the ballpark of being a hopeless single, and I'm going to put myself in that one as well. We're not very good at talking to girls, but I know that you had a really good solution for our problem of talking to girls, right? And you did that through actually what you're just talking about with an AI company.
Yeah, exactly. So not to dive too deep into it, but I created this company, or not really a company, I created an app called Disco. And the idea behind Disco was that instead of just being a superficial dating app where, you're just looking at everybody's pictures, you have a simulated conversation based off of the two potential candidates' profiles. And that simulated conversation is done through OpenAI's API. So I did this for one of my computer science classes' final projects, and all I had to do was make a super simple UI and then do an API call to OpenAI. If you don't know what API call is, we'll talk about it in a little bit. But this was what is known as an API wrapper, and that is the main thing that we're going to be talking about today.
A company like this is so similar to the companies that are getting millions and millions of dollars, and I know you didn't get millions and millions of dollars for this, but it is something to question of why are these companies getting so much money, and is there actual legitimacy to these companies?
Right, and furthermore, that was my pretty much intro to computer science class. I didn't have much technical experience. I didn't have a doctorate in natural language processing, but I was still able to make something that I thought at the time and other people thought at the time was pretty revolutionary, and these exact companies actually, just similar to Disco, are popping up now that we're seeing that. So
okay, sweet. So what let's actually talk about what AI wrappers are and dive into it. And so I think the main point to learn from this is that these companies aren't making new ChatGPTs, right? They're not making the grit of it. In fact, they're using popular large language models like GPT and like Llama to cultivate an idea. And for yours, it was a dating app. For others, they've used it for computer engineering and different topics to fine tune these topics into a chatbot, essentially. And this chatbot is super, super specifically good at this one subject.
Right, exactly. So I talked about API earlier. That's an application program interface. And that's a way basically for different applications to communicate with each other. So someone builds a basic, front end, a basic website, and they're able to use an application program interface to communicate with the OpenAI API. Mm-hmm. And so that way what they can do is they can use their own data, their own fine-tuned data mixed with the OpenAI's API for natural language processing, and then they can accomplish great things doing so.
Yeah, and just to talk a little bit about fine-tuning. So fine-tuning, the way I see it, is that's really the magic behind it all. That's how these AI wrappers go in and make themselves, this product. So fine-tuning is basically when a company gets a bunch of data, and let's give an example. So Devon AI is a company that is an AI wrapper, and they use it for a computer engineering platform. And so what they've done is they got a bunch of information on this topic and a bunch of data and threw it into a large language model. And so what this does is now this large language model that's already been created, that's not their property, but they're using it because it's open source, is now able to be Devon AI and act as this chatbot that's super, super specifically good. And so, that's basically what fine tuning is, and that's the magic behind it all.
Right. And so, looking at Devon AI, today we're talking about the companies that are failing, that will fail, 99%. But Devon AI actually has a really cool interface.
Yeah. It's very nice, actually.
The idea behind it is that, it's iterative programming. So or iterative prompt engineering. So, right, you put in a task that you want this AI to achieve, and it can communicate with itself and put in future prompts and iterate that way to achieve solutions, oftentimes, like you said, with computer development or computer engineering. Looking at that, so why is that a company that will succeed versus some of these other, AI wrappers that we're seeing like Disco? And the idea behind it is that the underlying AI model wouldn't be able to achieve the same tasks that Devon AI could. Whereas a lot of these other wrappers, maybe you get to that solution a little quicker or whatever, but at the base of it, at the root of it, those AI models could achieve those same things.
Correct. And that kind of raises the question of which ones are going to be successful, which ones are going to fail. And for me, I think the simple answer to that is the company needs to have an actual solution. I don't think the companies that are going to succeed are going to be things that you can just put into ChatGPT or put into Llama, and can be answered through that. So there needs to be a real need for this and a real problem solved. And I think there are companies that are doing this. It's not going to happen with all of them. It's almost impossible. And that actually, that kind of brings my brain into it, and thinking back to the dot-com era. And with the dot-com era, obviously we don't know about the companies because they failed, but there was thousands, hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of companies that did fail because it's so difficult at that time to make a product that people actually needed. Obviously, you got your Amazons and you got your Facebooks and Googles, but think about all the companies that didn't make it, and we're going to see a bunch of these that are going to pop up right now. And yeah, those are part of the 99%, and we're here to try to find the 1%.
One thing to note, though, is that these startups kind of have to be AI wrappers. They have to use existing LLMs because the financial investment to try and train one of these models, one of these competitive LLMs, is absurd. It really is just the biggest companies in the world dumping a very, very large percentage of their cash flow into training these models. So it's the only kind of potential way. So the hope is that, in using these big LLMs, they're going to be able to come up with more creative solutions, creative ways of using the LLMs privately. That's the nature of American capitalism, is the creative nature comes from startups and entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And so there is a benefit, but why we're saying that they're going to fail is that they don't have that sustenance. A lot of the times they're not going to have that sustenance because then these big companies can just, pretty much take that idea and implement it themselves.
Correct. That's why you see, OpenAI partnering with Microsoft, right? Think about how much money, how many billions of dollars is going into that. And like you said, the entrepreneurs that have a good idea, that have a legitimately good idea, can't have Microsoft money. And so it makes sense. And it makes sense. I mean, this is a whole nother video, but it makes sense of why the people want these LLMs to be open source, right? It's because we want to be able to use it and go further with them and actually make a product themselves. So I think the baseline of it is that there are going to be companies that fail. There's going to be actually probably way, 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 way more companies that do fail than succeed. But Devon AI has a shot. I don't know if Disco does. Probably not. But we could talk about it another date. And if anybody wants to partner with Conall, he's open. But the idea is that so many are going to fail. And it has to. That's just how it's going to be because it's this new industry.
Well, it's the hype, right?
Yeah.
You hear all the time this AI hype. And, I've even gotten to a point where we literally have a channel where we talk primarily about AI. And when I see some AI advertisement or, I'm looking through the documentation for something in Azure that I'm trying to learn for work. And the first thing before it even describes what the tool is it says, you can use this for AI models, and here's how you do it, and go to this link to look at it. Like, it's just everywhere, every ad. And so kind of part of the reason we wanted to talk about this video is, a lot of it is going to be garbage. And just like the dot-com bubble, you said, a lot of it's not going to exist. But it is still worthwhile to take a look at what is out there, what is innovative, what has the potential to survive, and look at why, So that's kind of what we're planning on trying to continue doing throughout this channel.
Yeah, and I think the goal over time is to hopefully we get to narrow down and see those companies that do succeed, because it's not easy. I think there's so many that are out there, and there's also so many that are out there that are claiming we have the best, right? Like, how many times do you see make the best AI video or make the best whatever? And a lot of it isn't all that great. So I think with time, as the hype dies down with everything, there's always hype cycles. There's hype with crypto. There's hype with the .com, right? There's all of this stuff. We'll be able to narrow it down. Yeah. And that just comes with time.
You'll be able to see what survives from the ashes, It's kind of the same way with crypto. Like now we're looking at pretty much just like Bitcoin and ETH after,
instead of all the meme coins like Shiba. I mean, Shiba's doing all right, but there's so much garbage. Yeah. There's so much garbage.
And I think it probably takes a bit of skill to be able to identify that, And so that's what we're trying to bring to anyone watching these videos.
Yeah, and it's just about being open-minded, knowing that, like, not, and also not being blinded by the light, not thinking that every single company is going to succeed. And honestly, like, there's going to be a lot of companies that do come out of this that are these major things, and we're just going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, so
great,
very excited for it. So
yeah, and I think a cool little way to wrap this up. I think we're back. We're very excited to be back. We have a new setup. And yeah, thanks for coming back and supporting us. We have some new hairstyles. I don't have hair on my head, and Conall doesn't have hair on his upper lip, so that's good. And yeah, we're gonna keep on posting. We're gonna get back in the flow of things. And
lots of change too. We're looking at adding a bunch of stuff and just iterating. You know, this was a learning process. Like the fact that we just had to deal with life circumstances to try and get back here. But we're excited. We got the studio, like you said. And so we're glad you guys are here. And we wrap it up.
I will say, there's one thing that will never change, and this is the last question of the day. So, Conall, what is onces plus onces?
Probably
deuces.